Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you'll get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback, $2.99 ebook download, including my latest NYPD Laughing in the Line of Duty. Speaking of authors, today we have a fascinating guest. Before joining the NYPD in 1957, Joe Cirillo fought in the Korean War. After serving his country and the city of New York, Joe went on to an impressive acting career, appearing in classics like The Godfather, Ghostbusters, and Splash, to name a few. Joe also provided security for Hollywood legends Jackie Gleason, Frank Sinatra, Telly Savalas, and John Candy. And if that's not impressive enough, Joe's written a wonderful book about his experiences entitled An Offer I Couldn't Refuse, From the NYPD to Hollywood. It's available on Amazon.com, and here's what the book looks like. It's got a great cover of Joe in uniform from back in the day. I'd like to welcome my friend Joe Cirillo. Joe, how you doing today?
Very good, thank you. Nice
Joe,
to
you
be
and I
here
got a
with
lot in common. We both Bronx kids.
Right.
We both joined the NYPD, and my escape on Saturdays and Sundays was going to the movies like you.
you. Exactly.
As a young man, you went to fight in the Korean War. What was that like?
You know, as you read in my book, I didn't mention everything about the Korean War. I try to make it very light. I never said of it, talked about anybody getting killed or anything like that. As I did in the police department, I tried to keep that, the real heavy stuff I left out. But I went to Korea. For 1 year, I was back and forth on the front lines. I was in combat. I got the combat cross and all. And it was a tough life, but made it back. And here's another strange thing. We were talking about Randy Jurgensen, who's also a retired detective, French Connection. And we worked together in many, many movies. We worked as actors together. And it wasn't until a few years later we were talking, and he mentioned that he was in Korea. And I said, I was in Korea. We start talking about the past, and lo and behold, he said he was on Pork Chop Hill. I says, I was on Pork Chop Hill. We actually relieved his unit. So that was a big coincidence. And he always talks about that now. We didn't know each other. We never knew each other, but we found this out later years. That my group went up to relieve his outfit on Pork Chop Hill.
And thank God the both of you made it back safely.
Yeah, both of us. Yeah, thank God. He got a Purple Heart. He was wounded, but we both made it back. But little did we know we both were in Korea until many years later. Right.
So you transitioned back to the United States, and you back with your family. What made you join the New York City Police Department?
I was working in the post office, okay, and a group of guys from my neighborhood said they were going to take the police test. And they said, Joe, why don't you take the test? I said, nah, I'm not going to take the test. They said, no, we're all taking the test. So I said, oh, what the hell? Let me take the test. I was the only one that passed. I became a cop, and no one else did. But anyway, that's how I became a cop, really.
What was the police academy like back in 1957?
It was an old school building on Hubert Street. Yeah, Hubert Street. Yeah, you wouldn't know about it. It was an old schoolhouse I think it was condemned, and that was the police academy. I never was in the new one. That came many years later. And what we did, the range was out at Floyd Bennett Field, or we went out there was no City Island then, everything was totally different. It was a whole different era then, definitely with the police department. We didn't have anything that the guys today have. Nothing at all. Oh, you got to remember, I went on in 57. So, yeah. So.
Well, it was a lot different back then because in your time, even before you graduated the police academy, they would throw you out in the street as a trainee, or I guess they called you guys the Grays because you'd wear like that gray uniform.
Yes. We did have the Grays. And I mentioned it to you earlier, but when we were in Grays, they had a lot of problems up in the Bronx, and they said there were a lot of gangs, so they took us out of the academy and they assigned us to different precincts in the Bronx. I ended up in the 4-2. I lived in the 4-0. So Oh, actually, a block away from the 149th Street was the dividing line,
Right.
as you know. I lived on 148th Street, so I was in my backyard practically. But I enjoyed it. It was pretty good. Yeah, I met a lot of nice guys, and I really got to enjoy the job there. Then after we went back to the academy. We finished up in the academy, and they sent me to the 2-0 precinct. And I said, 2-0 precinct? Oh my God! I didn't want to go. But it turned out to be a very good precinct. Yes, yes.
Well, back then, you guys didn't have portable radios.
We we had nothing. We had nothing. No portable radios, no vests, nothing, nothing. We had call boxes. We'd go to the call box every hour. When we were assigned, in the sitting room, we got assigned a number, 22, 37, whatever. So every 37 minutes past the hour, you'd go to the call box, call in so they know you're okay. Or if there was an assignment, they give you the assignment that way. That was
So
the
if you
way.
didn't call in, they'd send like a radio car to look for you?
Well, the sergeant came around usually what we call the C. He come to see if you were on your post, and of course we had, there were a lot of foot posts, so I was there with a lot of foot cops. My post was on 81st Street to 83rd Street on Columbus Avenue, and let me shut that.
It's fine.
Yeah, I was on. I had it. Anyway, yeah, I was on Columbus Avenue, and I walked the post, and I got to know every shopkeeper, every person on my post, and I was there for many years till I got into the radio car. But you got to know the people. You really got to know the people then. In fact, one of the I'll just give you a quick, for instance.
Sure.
I knew all the people because I was on the crossing guard. We had bank guard. We had everything. So you got to know the civilians, the real people in the neighborhood. And one of the women, her son became a cop, and he was a very famous cop in the NYPD, Al Shepard. He was with the crane coming down. He was in emergency service. He was highly decorated, and he became a cop because of me. When he got married, I was invited to the wedding, and I don't know if I think his father was deceased. And when they called the families to get up and dance, the mother and father. I danced with his mother, so that was a real honor to do that.
That's cool. People don't realize that the Upper West Side and the 2-0 precinct back in your time was a rough neighborhood.
Oh, it was the worst in the 84th Street, West 84th Street, between Columbus and Amsterdam Avenue, 4 police officers in one block. It was post 44. The actual description of the post was one half of East 44. So it was broken up in quarters. So you had 4 policemen in the block, 2 on Columbus and 2 on Amsterdam. So it was a total of 10 cops for West 84th Street. That's how bad it was. And then on 80th Street and down, we had a lot of drug dealers. You had all kinds of problems. It was that upper end of the West Side there on the 20th precinct was brutal. It was a real bad area. Yes.
As a young beat cop, you saw a lot of bad things. Could you share the story about the 2 drunks in the Endicott Hotel when something was in the next room?
Oh yeah, that was weird. Yes, I got a call, and the Endicott Hotel was one of the bad hotels, and so I went to the desk and they said 2 guys upstairs. They called. I went up there and they were in the room. I says, "What's going on?" They said, "I had some kind of problem in my room. What's the matter?" "I don't know. Take a look." I go in there and there's a body hanging through the ceiling. So apparently what happened was somebody must either committed suicide. I don't know if it was a homicide, and they threw him in the alleyway, and he actually crashed through the roof, and half his body was hanging from the ceiling.
I'm guessing that was a job for emergency service to get him out of there.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know. Yeah, it was a whole big thing. I don't remember. I'll be honest. I don't know if it was a homicide, but it was very weird. I mean, as a cop, you were a cop, so we faced many, many weird situations. Yes, definitely.
And it's never when you expect it. You think you're going to have a nice, easy day, and you walk into a fire, or
Yeah, right,
or,
right.
yeah. There's no rhyme, or you can't plan your life around what's going to happen at work.
And you can have a great day with the police department, as
Oh,
with
yeah.
the people, the people on, all the stores, they were so good. I mean, I'd walk in and out of every store to let them know that I'm there in case something happens, and they all treated me great. They called me Joe the Cop. I was known as Joe the Cop. Yeah, it was good. It was good.
Another great story from your book, an offer I couldn't refuse from the NYPD to Hollywood, was how, as a young patrolman, they needed you to be in a police lineup, and you wound up getting picked out as the shooter.
Right. Yes, that was another thing. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you remember, there was another famous cop who was my partner, Jerry Giorgio. Jerry
yeah.
Giorgio also became an actor, and he also did a lot of Law and Order stories. But what happened? We were in a carpool together. We worked our tour, and there was a killing, and so they said, we want a lineup. So they said, you guys want to stay? So we said, yeah, we'll do it. And we stood in the lineup, and after the lineup, the detectives came up and says, Joe, they picked you. I said, me? I was out on patrol. Yeah, that's a true story. Yeah.
They're all true stories. I mean, just as a cop reading your book, I know all this to be true because people couldn't make this stuff up.
No, it's unbelievable. A lot of stuff is unbelievable.
Could you share the story about the bat in the apartment?
Oh yeah, that my Tony Massimillo was with me on that. In fact, he's my neighbor. We still go to all meetings together. But anyway, we were on patrol and we got a call about a bat in an apartment on Riverside Drive. So we went up there, and there's a bat, and we tried to shake it out the window, and it kept flying and swooping at us. So I says, we got to get rid of this bat. So Tony ran down in the car, and we had a spear in the car that we took away from a kid who was trying to kill his mother, and we had it in the car. So he came up with the spear, and we finally speared it. And then we took it back to the precinct, and we got pins, and we pinned it on the sitting room wall. Yeah, that was another weird one. Yes, you're bringing back memories like wow.
It's funny. I could picture that, like you're walking into the station house to start your tour. At the end of the tour, you go into the muster room, and there's a bat hung up on the wall.
Right.
That's cop humor.
It was right. We pinned it right on the sitting room wall where the alarms were.
It probably sat there for a couple of tours until one desk officer said, all right, you know what? Enough of this crap. Get this thing out of here.
Right, exactly.
Another great story from your book, and this one really blew me away. And people, I mean, this happened many years ago, but there was this famous heist at the Museum of Natural History, probably late 50s, early 60s.
Yes.
It was what was it?
Star of India.
The Star of India, and there was a famous burglar by the name of Murph the Surf who broke into the Museum of Natural History, stole this diamond, then he gets arrested. He goes down to Florida. He's involved in a double homicide, and then he goes to jail for many years, and somehow he wound up getting out. But you were the first cop on the scene of this major heist at the Museum of Natural History.
Yes, what happened was we were doing a late tour, and we got a call to report to I was in the radio car, report to the Museum of Natural History at 10:39, which is like a past burglary. So we went down. It was like maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't remember the time exactly, but it was early morning, early shift. And the guard came down. I said, well, what's going on? He says, oh, they broke some glass upstairs. I said, broke some glass? Yeah, they broke. I said, let's take a look. So we went upstairs, takes us to where the jewels are all kept. And there's all the cases, the coals in them and banged out. And I said, whoa, this is glass. I called the sergeant. The sergeant came, and then the detectives came. Then the chief of detectives was real big. Now, here's the strangest thing. I'm reading this story not too long ago. I'm reading all about Murph the Surf and so on. Then I find out that he was actually there. When I was there, they were on the ledge leaving to go out because he said when he got to the street level to go to to get away from that area, there were all police there. So it had to be right after I called all So we had detectives, we had every police car there. So he actually was still on the ledge, walking around the ledge to get out. And you can check that out if you read the story from Mirth to Surf. Yeah.
You just
So
found that
he
out
was
recently?
actually there.
You just found that out recently, all these years later?
I never knew that. I read that recently. It had to be a few months ago. I'm reading this whole thing about Mirth to Surf. And then he's saying the police cars were all downstairs. I says, oh my goodness, then he was on the ledge while I was there. And we never checked. We didn't know which way he got in, you know. So
I mean, I know later on in life he became a minister and somehow got out on parole, but he was involved. I mean, he was a killer. I mean, he was involved in a double homicide. I think two women.
Two women, yes.
Down in Florida.
Exactly.
So at some point during your NYPD career, you catch the acting bug, and you find yourself as an extra in the Corleone wedding in the movie The Godfather.
I actually had lines in that. That's how I got my Screen Actors Guild card.
You had lines in that scene?
Oh yeah, but here's the strangest thing. I'll start from the beginning.
Yeah.
I got to know. Actually, across the street from the museum is a big apartment house called the Beersford Apartments, and a lot of movie stars lived there. It was Stephen Eady, who I became friend with. Laura Nero, Abe Burrows, Mike Nichols, Phil Silvers, Red Buttons. There were so many people that I got to know. And they liked me because right in front of their entrance to their building was a bus stop. So a lot of times their limos would be there, and I'd walk over and they'd want to leave. And I said, no, it's okay, stay there. So they got to know me, they got to like me. So I got to know a lot of them. I became friendly with Mike Nichols. And one day he said to me, Joe, how would you like to be in the movies? I said, I'm not an actor. He says, don't worry, we'll make you one. He called Paramount Pictures, and he sent me down for an interview. So when I went for the interview, this woman, her last name was Eastman, I remember that, and she said to me, what makes you think you can act? I says, hey, I'm a cop. We're the best actors in the world. We're doctors. We're lawyers. So she says, you're right. So they gave me a small role in The Godfather. I did the role. It's not in the movie, but I have. Paramount gave me all the pictures of my scene, and what happened in 1973. I got a residual for that role. I've been getting checks every month since 1973. I got a check from Ghostbusters as a residual check, and my scene is not there. But you can see me in different scenes in the wedding scene.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you have to bring Connie and Carlo a gift?
No. I actually was like an extra part, but, I had the lines, so. But that's what got me my Screen Actors Guild card.
What I was fascinating from your book, and I really, really enjoyed it, was that your daughter came this close to being cast as so in Godfather 2, there's a scene where De Niro and his buddy go to the movies. And the movie theater executive, the guy that owns the movie theater, is being extorted by Don Fanucci.
Right.
And Don Fanucci comes in the back to shake down the theater owner, and he puts a knife to the guy's daughter, who's also actually in this vaudeville play.
Right.
And your daughter got that close to getting that scene?
Yes. What happened was, when they were filming that, I couldn't work in it because I was in the original, which was 1940, whatever it was, the year. So I couldn't be in the
in the 20s.
Yeah, right. So anyway, the casting director called me and he said, Joe, do you have anybody, maybe a family, want to work in this? I said, I got my daughter and my son. Kids, they were kids at the time. So I said, all right. So I brought them there. When I got there to his office, he was sitting down writing, and I'm standing in with my daughter and everything. And so I said, I brought them along. Here they are. He looks up, he goes, Maria. I said, no, her name is Darlene. He said, no, that's Maria. I said, no, it's Darlene. He says, no, she's perfect for the part of Maria. He got on the phone. He called the casting director, the main casting director for Godfather 2. His name was Roos. His last name was Roos. We went to Paramount, and we spoke with him. He met her in the hall. We met him. He said, oh, she's perfect. So that was that. Now, I'm home one Sunday, and I'm driving to my brother's home in New Rochelle, and I get a call from my daughter. And she says, Dad, I just got a call from Francis Ford Coppola. He wants me to go up to his suite. I said, what? He wants me to go up to his suite in New York. I says, you got to be kidding. I said, okay. I called my friend Tony Massimillo, who I just mentioned before, and he picked her up, and we met on the Parkway, and I drove her into the city. He was living in on 60th and 5th Avenue. We went up to his apartment. He invited us in. We spent a half hour together. He said, I just want you to know I wanted to meet the girls that are going to be working in the movie. Now, when that scene came up, I actually was an extra in it. They had me in there. The only reason they used me in the back of De Niro and Pacino, I mean not Pacino, the other fellow, in that room where the scene was going on, they had me there because there were a lot of non-movie people, and he said make sure if anybody gets up, sit them down. So that was my job, and I see the scenes without my daughter. So I went to, after a while, I went to the Francis Ford Coppola, and I mentioned, I said, what happened? He says, Joe, he says, I'm so sorry. He said, your daughter was not Screen Actors Guild, and we had to hire this girl. And the girl did the scene. Now, in front of me is Francis Ford Coppola's mother with her friends. They're in the scene also. And I hear her saying to the girls, I told Francis he should have used the Italian girl, meaning my daughter. But my daughter never got the role. So
I'm sorry to hear that. She got that close.
Yeah, oh, very close, very close.
Yet another great story from your book, an offer I couldn't refuse from the NYPD to Hollywood, is you're filming a robbery scene in the Bowery, and a cab driver sees this robbery and thinks it's for real and gets involved. And then he gets smacked around by a drunken Archie Bunker.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we were doing the scene. It was with Ernest Borgnine and
Carol
O'Connor. Carol O'Connor had a few in him. And the cab driver came up. And I don't recall who I have in my arms. I think it might have been him or Borgnine, one or the other. And he jumps up and he's actually punched the cab driver. And then, oh my God, all hell broke loose, and all of a sudden they came running over to the cab driver, and they took care of him.
Paid him off.
It was all quiet. Yeah, but that actually, that was incredible.
Did the cab driver eventually recognize him as Archie Bunker?
Oh yeah, no, not that. He just, I know who you are, Mr. O'Carroll. I know who you are. He said O'Carroll or whatever his name was. Yeah, they didn't say Archie Bunker, no, but that was it. Yeah.
I also see you became friends with Tony Cirillo, otherwise known as Paulie Walnuts from The Sopranos. He must have been quite a character.
Tony was a real felon, He
did time.
Oh yeah. And the first time I ever met him, we were shooting Crazy Joe, where I had a small part in it, and he came on the scene, and he was, built, like a rock, and he had 2 German Shepherds with him, 2 Dobermans. And he came on the scene and came over to me, and we started talking, and we became friends. And then as he became an actor, we started working together. In fact, Randy Jurgensen and I picked him. We had a movie called New York Cop that I was involved in. I was like one of the producers on it. And we hired him as our main mob boss. And through the years, he'd see my wife, he'd always call her Mrs. Cirillo. He always says, Mr. Cirillo, then he'd start calling me Joe. And the last time Randy and I spoke to him, he says, we're thinking of using you in another film. And he said to me, Joe, do you think you can afford me? But that was it. Yeah, Tony, he was a good guy. Yeah, Paulie Walnuts, yeah.
You also worked on the hit TV show Kojak when it was the #1 show on television. Then you became really good friends with Telly Savalas. What was that like? That must have been a wild ride.
Okay, what happened with that? Okay, Kojak, as you know, was the #1 show for many years. And what happened was they always filmed Kojak in California. What they did, they'd come to New York and they'd make stock shots. And what they are is Telly be driving in the car, get out of the car, walk into a building. Driving in the car, go into another building, so in and out of buildings, so it looks like he's in New York. and then combine that with whatever they shoot in California. So you think it's shot in New York. In 1976, they decided to come to New York and shoot the whole thing in New York. So they went to the police commissioner and they said, we need a cop who is knowledgeable about film who could be Telly Savalas' bodyguard. And they said, we got the right guy for you. And they picked me. So I ended up being with Telly Savalas in 1976 for the whole year, working with him on the set every day, getting paid from him and getting paid from the police department. So it was a double gig for me.
Double dipping.
We shot for a whole year, and I became friends with his family, the whole bit. After the year was over, when the season was over, he said to me, Joe, when can you retire? I said, I can retire in 2 months. He says, you come out to California, you got a job. 2 months later, I went out to California, hooked up with him, started to work with him, and I ended up with him almost till he died. Yeah. Great guy. He was the greatest. He was the greatest.
Your book is just a fascinating ride through the NYPD, through Hollywood. And then there's a story in there how you wind up on an episode of Quincy and you befriend Jack Klugman, and Klugman tells you, can you pick me up every day in your Hyundai?
Right, yeah. That's another thing. But, you know, it really had nothing to do with Quincy. It had nothing to do with it. While I was in California, of course, I was allowed to work on other shows in addition to Kojak. And one of the directors who I became friendly with, he says, Joe, I'm going to be directing at Quincy. I'd like you in it. I said, all right. So he gave me a nice part. It was a pretty good part in a Quincy. And so that was then. I didn't get to really meet him. I mean, we worked together. I'm talking about Jack Klugman. I worked in scenes with him, but not that I could go up and speak to him. So now, a few years later, when I had my security company, I was getting most of the movies and gigs that came in. I would be with the stars. So he came into film with Rob Lowe. They had a show going, Rob Lowe and him. They had a TV series. So the producers called me and said, we got Jack Klugman. Would you like to be his security? I said, yeah, definitely. So I ended up being with him. And he got to like me so much that I had a little car, and he had a town car. And he said, no, I want to go with Joe Cirillo. And we'd be in the car together. This little car driving to the set. I drive him back and forth, and we became good friends. He was another great guy. I mean, you had a lot of great guys in the business.
I'll tell you a funny story about Jack Klugman. So when The Odd Couple was on television, I was a little boy, but I loved the show.
Yes,
and I remember one day my grandfather, who was a big-time horse player, looks up and he goes, I know him. And I go, Grandpa, who are you talking about? He goes, Jack Klugman. I go, what do you mean you know him? He goes, I know him from the track. I said, really? He goes, oh, yeah. He used to talk to him at the track all the time.
Yeah, when I was in the my car with him, he'd have the racing sheet.
Yeah, my grandfather said he was always at the pony.
Yes, he liked the horses, yes.
I'm sure you get asked this question a million times, but I got to ask. How did you wind up in Ghostbusters?
Oh, that was a simple thing, really. What happened was the casting director in New York, they had a casting director in California, the role came up and she called me. And she says, Joe, I got something for you. Would you like to work in it? I said, yeah, fine. At that time, I did the 2 series. I did the Kojak series. I did the Eyeshine series. And I co-starred in a couple of movies and so on. And so I didn't even have to read or anything, and I got the part. And I didn't know it was going to be that big a part, because we got to the set and I did all that stuff, that you see, the exteriors all in New York. And then they told me I had to go to California for the interior. So I didn't realize how big a role it was going to be. And so we did all that in New York, and then maybe a week or 2 later, they flew me to California, and we worked in a similar firehouse in L.A., and we did all the interiors there. So we was there every day for 3 or 4 days, working together. So it's incredible. Yeah, I never realized that line that I had. I'm going next week. There's 40th anniversary of Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
I'll be in New York at the firehouse signing autographs. Also, they fly me to I've been to Charlotte. I've been to West Virginia. where they fly me there. They put me up in a hotel. I get to sign autographs. I sell my book and so on. And now I've just got an invite to Sioux City, Iowa. Same thing. All expenses paid for September 13, 14, and 15. It's crazy. Over one line, I'm more famous for that than anything else I've been in.
Well, let me set it up for people that don't know. So in the classic film Ghostbusters, the EPA guy, the guy that Bill Murray says has no dick,
Right.
comes back to the firehouse with Con Edison and the New York City Police Department to shut the power off to at the Ghostbusters firehouse. Joe plays the NYPD captain, and he's in his full uniform. And what's the line you say, Joe, when the EP...
You do your job, pencil neck. Don't tell me how to do mine. I get that when I'm signing autographs, I get people that want me to say that. So
Oh, yeah.
I have to repeat that about 20 times. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. My best friend and I, we're still friends to this day. We both came on the job. He came on the job a year before me. We went to see that movie as teenagers. And we came out of the movie theater, and one of us, I remember saying, "Do you think that guy was a cop? Because you played it off so well. This is before the internet. We could look you up or anything. But like,
Right.
you think that guy was a cop? Like, I think that guy was a cop.
Yeah. Thank goodness for my police background. It got me a lot of roles. Believe me, I got a lot of roles. The funny thing about it, whenever I played a role, I was either a gangster, a mob guy,
Right.
or a cop. You could go either way. Well, that was my neighborhood anyway. In my neighborhood, if you didn't become a cop, you became a wise guy. You're
Same in
growing
my
up.
neighborhood. If you didn't go civil service, very few went to college, and the rest was civil service or wound up as street guys.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
So if your military and acting and NYPD careers aren't enough for a resume, you become personal security guard for a lot of celebrities. Can you share the story? This one I mean found fascinating from your book. You're at Wave Hill, which is this parcel of land in the Riverdale section of the Bronx
Right.
where they're filming this movie Izzy and Mo with Jackie Gleason and Art
Yes.
Carney. And they're sitting on lawn chairs between takes, and you got these two iconic actors just reminiscing.
Incredible. Yes, they were sitting, like I said, in that Adirondack chairs, and they was just sitting there. They had a cup of tea or whatever what was in it, and he'd be smoking a lot, and they say, "You remember when we did this?" And they'd start reminiscing about certain things, and I was just standing behind them all this time, no one near us. And his valet or whoever it was came over to me, and he was listening. And then I said to him, "My God, he smokes a lot. He just kept." He says he smokes 2 or 3 cartons a day. That's how much smoking Jackie Gleason did. Yeah, and another thing about Jackie Gleason was that I was when we had the security firm, I ended up being his security, and I went back to my office and. The producers called me, and I had to stay with him instead of, being back in my office. But he was a great guy, a genius.
People don't. I mean, he's gone many years now, but I mean, he started in the golden age of television, and he didn't rehearse. He would get his lines and go, "Okay, let's go." And
I'm going to tell you the scene. We're on the corner of Bleecker Street near Bowery, long block. They're shooting a scene where he has to walk down the street and get to a door on a soundtrack. And when he gets to the door of the speakeasy, he's got to knock 3 times, and the soundtrack is 3 drum beats. So he has to walk down this whole street, get there. The director is Jackie Cooper. So now I'm standing there, Jackie Cooper, Jackie Gleason, and Joe Cirillo standing there. And he says, "Okay." Jackie Cooper says, "Let's rehearse it." Jackie Gleason says, "No rehearsals, shoot it." He says, "Jackie, this is a long scene." He says, "You shoot it." Okay. Start shooting. Jackie Gleason starts walking down the street, pats a little boy on the head, tips his hat to a woman, turns around, does this, that, gets to that door, boom, boom, boom. 3, got it all in one take. The other thing, his shirts, everything had to be to a T. He wanted to look great. And he knew his line. He knew the lines of everybody's role. He's incredible guy. Incredible.
I don't know if you know this, and you might. Did you know that Barney Martin, the NYPD detective who later became Jerry Seinfeld's dad on Seinfeld, was the stand-in for Jackie Gleason during the filming of The Honeymooners?
No, I didn't know that. No, I didn't. No.
It's amazing how many NYPD guys are in the movies.
Yeah. And actually Norton, of course. I did his security for him several times. And another thing came up where I was with an actress. We went on a set one day. And so we walk over to the set, and the director says hello to him. And he says, "Hey, Joe, how are you?" And I'm looking at the director. I said, "Who's this guy?" I don't know him. He says, "Joe, don't talk. You don't know me, and I'm the director, and I know you." I said, "I'm so sorry. I really don't know who you are." He says, "You were my cop in Harry and Tonto." I worked in Harry and Tonto. I did a scene.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. I did a scene with him. Yeah, definitely so. But anyway, that was that. But I was so embarrassed. I mean, here's a director coming over to me, and I totally didn't know who he was. Yeah.
What was it like to be a bodyguard for John Candy and Steve Martin during the filming of Planes, Trains, Automobiles?
Incredible. John Candy, a sweetheart. Like, a lot of times I've had celebrities where I had to stay outside the camper. They wouldn't let me in. But with John Candy, quite a few of them let me in, of course. But John Candy, I'd be in there. He'd be playing cards. Got along great with him. I mean, he was a terrific guy. When I had to be with the other one, he's a comedian, but he was a straight guy. We'd walk down Fifth Avenue, and he'd go into art stores and look at paintings, and very quiet. I couldn't believe it. I says, "Wow, he's one of the biggest comedians," and to be with him, he wasn't like that. Definitely not. Yeah, that was great working with the two of them.
I read
Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah, I read Steve Martin's autobiography called Born Standing Up, and it's a fascinating read. And when he was at the top of his game as a stand-up comedian selling out stadiums and places, he realized he was out in Vegas at like the top, and he noticed a couple of empty seats in the back, and he says, "I got to pivot." He says, "I'm not going to be funny forever. I'm not going to sell out places forever. I got to pivot. I got to get into acting." A genius.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I couldn't believe it. Here I am and thinking, real funny guy, and here he is. He's going to art shows and things like that. Yeah, incredible. Yes, very.
You were also lucky enough to get insulted by Don Rickles. He said he was relentless. Could you just share what that was like?
Yeah, What happened was that at that time I was in Telly's employ, Telly Savalas. I worked for him. He called at the office one day and he says, "Joe, I'm over at Chasen's." He says, "I'm sitting with him," and he said, I need a certain papers." I says, "Okay," so I get the papers. I drive down there. When I get there, he's sitting at the table. He turns around to me and then he starts saying, "Hey, what Vinny Boombots, whatever," and he's told me all kinds of names. But I was so proud that I'm being insulted by him. Yeah, that was a great moment too.
And one of my favorite actors was the late Charles Durning. You got to spend some time with him. What was he like?
Oh, he another fantastic guy. He was with the extras. He'd stay with us. A lot of times I worked in his movies, usually as a cop. He was playing a cop, and I locked him up in one movie. I think it was, oh God, an old one. Yeah, one of the series that I locked him up in it, and so we got to be, pretty good not close friends, but we became friendly. So whenever I worked in a film, we'd see each other and talk. But he was another great guy. Durning was a great actor too. Yeah, and I worked about a good 4 or 5 movies with him, but not where I had big speaking parts, but working with him. And he was nice enough to come over and talk to all the guys. Definitely, good guy.
Yeah, he was a long-term working actor, and I mean, to this day, if I'm just channel surfing and I see him pop up in a movie, I'll stop because he's just that good.
Good actor, very good actor. Yeah.
Joe, your career has been filled with incredible experiences. I'm sure my listeners are curious. What's next for Joe Cirillo?
You know, let me say this, I don't know if you're aware of it. Now, you probably are if you read the book. I wrote 12 screenplays. I have 2 musicals. And what I would love to do is get one of the musicals going off Broadway at least, or get one of my screenplays actually done. But I can't, believe it or not, I can't even get an agent to listen to them. In other words, I would love for a producer to say, "Hey, Joe, I heard you got a musical. Can I hear this?" And I'm pretty sure if they heard it, they'd like it, because a lot of people have read my scripts, a lot of people have heard my music and so on for the shows, and a lot of them said, "Why hasn't this been done?" And the thing is, I can't get anybody to listen to it. I mean, people who can really do something. So that's what I'm going after right now. I keep emails, I send things out here and there. So I'm saying down the line, maybe somebody will come up, "Hey, Joe, let me hear that musical you're talking about. Or let me read that horror story that you say is so good." That's what I'm looking for. So that's actually what I'm doing now. But again, I'm doing that traveling. Like next weekend, I'll be at the 40th anniversary for Ghostbusters. So I'm still moving around at my age, running all over the place. Crazy, but it's all sweet and beautiful.
Listen, you're a talented guy because I loved your book, and I'm telling you this off camera, I'm a notorious slow reader, and your book's about 200 pages, and it took me an entire day, but I read the entire, it's a great read. I couldn't put it down.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wrote it myself. I mean, here's the other strange thing, and I keep saying that I have a girlfriend, and she helped me. She was the one that encouraged me to finish the book. But anyway, every time I look and I say to her, I can't believe that I wrote that. I wrote my own autobiography. And I start reading one of my scripts. I said, did I write this? I really can't believe that I wrote these things. But it amazes me that I actually finished them. Yeah.
Well, for my listeners out there, pick up a copy of Joe's book, An Offer I Couldn't Refuse, From the NYPD to Hollywood. It's available on Amazon.com. I'm going to post the link to Joe's book on YouTube and other podcast links. Joe, I can't thank you enough for spending this time with us today. It's been an honor to meet a guy like you, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Let me say this. I love all the people, especially Ghostbuster fans, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them, really. That's one line. And here I am, I'm talking to people all over the world, believe it or not, United Kingdom, Italy, Spain, and just over that rolling Ghostbusters. So I thank them. I thank all you fans, believe me. Thank you so much.
Joe, thank you again. I also want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my friends in Cape May, New Jersey, Clearfield, Utah, St. Pete, Florida, Pawtucket, Connecticut, and 29 Palms, California. If you work in law enforcement and have an interesting criminal background and would like to be a guest on the show, please drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram at VicFerrari50. If you enjoyed my content, check out my Amazon author page. Type in my name, Vic Ferrari like the car, where you can preview all my NYPD books for free. Again, check out Joe's book, An Offer I Couldn't Refuse, From the NYPD to Hollywood. It's available on Amazon. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and I'll have another episode out next week. God bless.
Okay. Bye.